I'm going to be this old in May, and I don't want to be one of those people that hang on. I don't want to be one of our podcast stories of somebody that hung on too long and the business slipped away. We're living this, and I'm sure we'll get into this in a later episode. There is so much coming at us right now with AI technology. I just think that it was one of those things for him where he was kind of seeing like the speed at which things are changing and evolving is, I mean, we are on this hockey stick with AI of turning things that might have gone like this that are just kind of going like this. And I think that's where he felt like now's the time. Welcome back to the Apex Business Advisors podcast. I am your host, Andy Kavanaugh, joined as always by the...
Wait a minute. What's going on here?
Am I the president? Are you the...
No.
We're going a different direction here. We're going to have to explain what's going on here. There's no Doug. So introduce yourselves to people who have not seen this, face for radio.
Yeah, so I am Andy Kavanaugh, the not the president of Apex, but along with my partner Jason Moxness, I acquired Apex a little over two months ago, and we're here to tell you our story of how this whole thing came from me being just the podcast host guy to now one of the owners of Apex.
And who's this gentleman sitting next to you?
It's my business partner, Jason Moxness. He was a friend of the podcast.
Mm-hmm.
We actually
Certified.
had some... Yeah, he did enough of the podcast episodes that he became friend of the podcast. He actually had a hidden episode where we had to call him Mason Jocksness. That sometimes we'll... At some point, we'll get to why he couldn't do that podcast. He did the podcast and then told us, hey, you can't run this podcast because my boss wouldn't let me run it. And I was like, you should really not have a boss. You should come over here with us where you and me can be the boss and we can say what we can talk. We can say whatever we want about podcasting. So,
Ironically, that had a lot to do with me coming over here. I got tired of the constraints of the banking industry and all the rules and regulations, and you guys are having so much fun over here. I call it home, so I'm happy to be here.
Well, Jason, tell us a bit more about that banking background for people who don't know and who you are and how did you end up at Apex?
Yeah. I guess my story coming to Apex started, almost 14 years ago. Doug Hubler, who we spoke about, the ex-president, do we call him that?
Former president?
Former president?
I mean, we're still paying for his Secret Service people to walk him around, so he's got presidential...
Yeah, it is true. He's got credentials, but Doug and I have been friends outside of work for many years. Just fantastic guy. He's a part of my peer advisor group. Somebody that, I would share intimate details with, struggles at work, whatever would come about those days. So back in 2012 is when we first started the conversation, and we were all coming out of the housing crisis, the recession, and I had unfortunately spent most of my career in mortgage. So I ran a large mortgage company running right into the recession, and that was a difficult time for a lot of people, and especially those that were involved in mortgage. And I went to my peer advisory group, Doug being one of the guys, one of the 6 guys in our group, and said, I need to do something different. I got to take a different path. Industry has changed, and we had a lot of ideas, a lot of thoughts, and that was when Doug said, "I think you should become a business broker at Apex." And I went all the way down the road with him on that. I remember he and his wife Pam took Paige and I out to dinner. Meet and greet went great. Our wives hit it off, as you would imagine. They're still friends today. And we were close to doing this in 2012. But at the same time, I wasn't sure I was done with banking, and had a great opportunity with Altera Bank, brand new bank in town, asked me to start an SBA division. So 12 years ago or 14 years ago, I guess things were different from an economic standpoint. My kids were quite a bit younger, still in school, still had college, wasn't quite ready to take the risk of being a business broker. And I decided to take the path of banking. So stayed in banking, started an SBA division for Altera, and we became that very first year the number 1 SBA lender in Kansas City. And we did that for 5 straight years. And that whole time period, probably a decade of SBA lending, was some of the most fun times I have had in banking. And what I really liked about it is that I got to learn this business from the other side of the table. So being a lender in this space, understanding SBA, structuring deals, helping buyers through the buying process of buying the deals that were coming through Apex. And Apex was my number one client. So what you guys were doing here in the volume that we're doing, it just played really well with what we were trying to accomplish in the SBA. So I credit a lot of my success and the bank's success on what Apex was doing. So fast forward a few years, 14 to be exact, Doug and I, again, still continued to be friends outside of work in our peer advisory group. And he was dropping hints along the way. Hey, whenever you're done playing in that banking role that you got, maybe now's the time to come and join me at Apex. And so the opportunity had been there for a long time. Just the timing wasn't quite right for me. And finally, kids out of college, we check a few boxes. Banking career was getting less enjoyable as the days went on. And a year and a half ago, decided to join Doug and you at Apex. And for me, when I joined, I knew that my plan, my goal was to eventually be an owner here. I'm an entrepreneur at heart. I've owned other businesses. I enjoy running companies. I enjoy growing companies, just like we did at Altera. So that's kind of my superpower is walking into something that's already going, already starting, and just make it better. And so yeah, I think I'll end my story there and turn it over to you, and then we can talk about how the two of us ended up in these seats.
Yeah. So for me, it was I had worked in corporate, couple of consulting roles, worked at H&R Block in a couple different areas there. Moved on into another consulting role, and when we had our second child, it was time to set down that particular role, because kind of hard to be like, hey, I'm going to be on the road for the next 4 or 5 days. See you guys this weekend. So came back and ironically joined a local credit union here. And it was kind of around that time that I really started getting the entrepreneur itch. Bought a small smoothie and nutritional supplement store. Ran that, actually tried to sell it through Apex. Learned a lot about actually selling a business through that entire transaction and that process. And then at the end of that, I was like looking for, well, what's next for me? And I was like, I kind of like this. So I joined Doug, I guess it was 5 years ago. And I think our origin story, I felt like, okay, that's it with entrepreneur type stuff for me. Like I don't want to own a store anymore. I don't want to have employees. I don't want to have all of these things that suddenly I signed up for again 5 years later. So never's, I guess, 5 years for anybody that's wondering.
I always wondered.
So 21, I joined here, kind of was getting my feet wet, that type of stuff, and then it was at an IBBA conference, ironically, where the seeds were planted with some of our colleagues that came in with this brilliant idea that they had hatched up on the airplane. And I was they became my third round at the bar that night, and not just 3 rounds, but my third round of where I should have been. I was getting ready to head up to the room. I'd had enough, but then I didn't want to be rude.
Was this the infamous one with the drum circle in the
sir.
morning?
I was about to ask
sure
that.
Was.
Yeah.
It sure was.
Immortalized in the podcast.
Yeah, I don't know that they do. Hopefully they took my suggestion of never doing drum lines to kick off IBBA. But Valerie and Debbie came bouncing into the hotel with this fantastic idea that I should buy Apex. And
what were their reasons for that?
Well, I was drunk enough that I don't really remember their reasons for why I should.
They were sober. You were drunk.
They were, unless they'd had a few airplane cocktails.
Right.
But,
that may be true as well.
I think that one of the things when I came in post-pandemic. And so I didn't come in with the legacy processes it was very manual, very labor intensive
In-person stuff.
in person, that all buyer seller meetings were in that conference room that's right across the hall. So I came in with working with companies that were nationwide. And so when you're managing people all across the country, H&R Block at the time that I was there had 18,000 offices. So in-person meetings were not a luxury that was afforded. And so I was able to come in and understand how to communicate with people that wasn't sitting right across the table from, how to move things along through email and phone and things like that. And so the other consulting work that we did was all process driven, process improvement, cost reduction. How do we drive cost out of process through people, process, systems, automation, those types of things. And so I think that, and I also think that age played a role in it, that I'm 10 to 15 years junior of those folks. And so as you kind of start thinking of succession plan, the 67-year-old guy doesn't want the 63-year-old to take over the company. So I'd had enough time and experience that I was the one that they thought. So that's why I think maybe we'll go off camera. We can ask them and we'll see how wrong I was. But it was also one of the times where Jason and I really had the opportunity really to spend a significant amount of time together for the first time. So,
did Jason hear this conversation?
I actually did. That's the funny part. I was sitting at the table. I was actually at the bank that was paying for the tab. So I guess that was my fault for all the overindulgence that took place that night. But I do remember that conversation. It was.
And were you thinking, wait, I want to buy Apex, and you didn't want to say that?
That's so funny you said that, but yes. So I'm sitting there listening to this thing unfold, and I'm like, oh my gosh.
Well, it's great because you got your banker's confidentiality hat on, so
Right.
that discretion is playing, but then it's yourself. You're the object of this potential thing. Why didn't you say anything at that time? Did you feel the atmosphere wasn't quite right to insert yourself?
Well, I also don't feel like I earned that right. I wasn't part of Apex.
You felt a broker had to be part of that process?
Right. And that's what Doug felt as well. So, Andy had earned already the love and respect of the team here. They loved and respected me as well from a banking relationship side. I actually officed here. We worked remotely at the time. So I had an office here. I did feel a part of the team, but I was the bank. I was the one funding their deals. So,
but that conversation didn't blunt your desire or make you think, oh well, this is over. If Valerie and Debbie want to do this, then I'm out. Or
oh no, it had the opposite effect. It inspired me to, oh my gosh, I probably should jump and take this risk before the opportunity leaves.
But that's 2 years later, right? We're talking. This is 21.
This was probably 2022 or 23.
21, you come on. 22 is when this IBVA conference is.
Yeah.
24 is when you come on.
I came on in 24.
So these live near each other. They're not a million miles apart.
Well, the funny thing is, the person who wasn't involved in this conversation was the one that needed to make the decision anyway. That was Doug.
Literally wasn't there.
He wasn't there. So.
Just a weird IBBA that Doug wasn't there.
Oh, he was there. He just wasn't at the table when the conversation was happening.
I don't think he attended that particular IBBA. I think that he had something going on.
Had they run the idea by him?
I think it was something that they hatched up.
I
don't know how much they hatched up on the airplane.
So they didn't run it by anybody.
Yeah, I will say, because again, Doug and I are friends outside of work, and we've had these conversations. I went to him not long after that and said, I just want you to know your team is wondering what you're going to do next. You can't, not that he has anything to hide in his age. He's probably in better shape and health than any of us, but it's just a natural question to ask. What's Doug's plan? Is he going to, we're assuming he's going to retire at some point. So when your team starts wondering, then they start getting nervous.
Yeah, well, and that's
not a good thing for a team to experience. So
the hilarious meta part of that is that we're always talking about succession planning.
Right.
Yeah.
We're in the business.
Podcasts and blogs and what we tell our owners. And then here it is, the person who owns the business that does all of this thing, now you're starting to try to bring that out of him.
Yeah.
And for his part, when you all did the podcast with Doug about it, he said in himself is like, well, I stayed longer than I thought I was going to. And I think that's part of just enjoying his work and enjoying the people, that he wasn't dreading coming in like, oh, how much longer am I going to have to do this? He just kept going, and I think sort of lost track of time. And then at some point people say, well, Doug, what's going to go on here? So how do we get those together? The conversation, you picking up the tab, you then deciding to come on board, and then the only person who you said should have been part of that conversation wasn't there. How does he bring the two of you together?
Well, I think we had individual conversations with him. I know that I'd had individual conversations. I'm very confident that you had them as well. And then about around Thanksgiving last year, so late November 2025, he asked me to lunch, which I think he asked you the day before or something like that. And so that he just kind of shared his plans of, I'm going to be this age in May.
He had lunch with both of you together?
No.
Separately.
Yeah, separate. So I'm going to be this old in May, and I don't want to be one of those people that hang on. I don't want to be one of our podcast stories of somebody that hung on too long and the business slipped away, because we're living this, and I'm sure we'll get into this in a later episode. There is so much coming at us right now with AI and technology and all of these things. And so I just think that it was one of those things for him where he was kind of seeing like the speed at which things are changing and evolving. We are on this hockey stick with AI of turning things that might have gone like this, that are just kind of going like this. And I think that's where he felt like now's the time.
So those separate lunches, did he say, I'd like you to maybe consider doing this with someone else?
Yeah, he said.
And he said Jason, and he told you Andy?
He named Jason and mine. Yeah, he's like, I want you to buy the business, and I want you to do it with Jason.
My conversation was a little bit different. And I'll back up a little bit too. And the reason, why it took me a while to get here, I'll blame my own pride.
That is
sooner.
I was going to say that is not a word I associate with.
I had talked to Doug years ago about coming over, and I've run banks before, and I've run large companies before, and I wanted to step in as a partner from day one. Let me buy into this, and you and I can run it together, and then when you're ready, you can dovetail back out.
I see.
And Doug really wanted me to be a broker first. He's like, I really need you to just come and be a broker first and do some deals.
Sweep the floor,
Sweep the floor, wax on, wax off.
Still stock the inventory.
So that honestly is what prevented me from coming sooner. So, okay, all right, I'll come and be a broker. I just want to know that there's a plan in place at some point in the future. I'm not going to push him out by any means.
Yeah, and knowing Doug, I'm sure that would have always been the case.
But, when Doug had lunch with me, my first thought was, I don't want to do this alone. I've done that before and could do it again, but I'm at the stage of my career. It would be nice to have a partner. It'd be nice to have someone. So Andy was the first and only name that I said, I think Andy needs to be a part of this, right? And he's like,
and did you have a relationship with each other the way that you each have a relationship with Doug?
No, I don't think so.
Your wives haven't met each other?
No, not at that point.
Okay.
I think that what I was mentioning a little bit ago is that Jason and I, that we actually, by a happy accident, ended up spending quite a bit of time in that Orlando, we'll call it the Orlando IBBA.
Flights were significantly delayed, a big storm coming in. He and I grabbed a seat at the bar and got to know each other better. And so I would say, our working relationship started back then.
Yeah.
How interesting.
Yeah.
Thanks to I just remember we were sitting at this place, we're eating dinner, and where I was looking, where he was looking, we had two completely different skies. I was like, I think we're going to be here for a while. I was like, hey, the service isn't that bad.
It's dark back
I don't think that, I'm not talking about the service. I'm talking about that little lightning bolt that just went off right behind your head. That's the thing that's going to keep us here for a while. And that was a late night getting home. I remember it was one of those like got home at 2, 3 in the morning after all the flight delays and just. But yeah, we our flights were delayed a significant amount of time. We just kind of we had a you know how airports get when thunderstorms roll through a major airport, seating becomes limited. So if you got a seat in a restaurant, at a bar, or something like that,
You hold
might
on
as
to
well
it.
stay on. You might as well stay in there. And so we did, and we just connected over work and people and.
So you were
family
cordial and
stuff.
you were colleagues. And it's one thing to be friendly and cordial in an office as colleagues. How did you feel like you could make the leap to being owners together? It feels like a cosmic jump to go from.
You know, there's a lot of personal things in there too that we, hadn't mentioned. Like we're girl dads. We both got 2 daughters, both in sports. Our wives are both teachers. So, you put those together, we already know that, we're connected at those levels. And so that's a great place to start. And then just working together.
Yeah, I don't know that we didn't work a lot of deals together because I was still kind of I was still on the upswing of my career here, so I wasn't really working deals that would be attracted to what Jason was seeking from a lender. But yeah, so we were cordial in the office. We, knew each other, liked each other, but we hadn't really had that time to connect and work a deal together because I wasn't working on anything that was big enough at the time that would warrant. I mean, honestly, it's this age-old business broker, take anything you can get when you're starting out, and but and he was advanced enough in the lending world that they had criteria that deals just weren't meeting. So that's where it at. It's specific to how we would kind of how we came to work together. This might actually be a pretty good jumping off point for this episode and do another episode specific to
Cliffhanger.
how yeah, exactly. But, I think we found out that we had very, very complementary skills. And, I think we could jump into kind of what that was after Doug had that conversation with us. And kind of, I guess we'll end that part with, I got back from my lunch. He had already had his. I popped my head into his office. Like, guess we need to go to lunch now too.
And that's where I want to end the episode. Is that I think that's a natural point for us to say, all right, now that everything's come together, what did that process look like? And in the next episode, I want to talk about the deal itself a little bit about how that came together. It's always fun. We're always talking about other deals. Now you're actually going to be talking about your own deal. So I think that'll be a bit fun as well. But thanks for getting us started on this and looking forward to hearing what's next.